I was kneeling in the bathroom, scrubbing away at a stain on the rim of the toilet with a small brush. The position made my knees creak under the strain, but I was used to it. For a 73-year-old body, a little bit of noise was perfectly normal. "Grandma, where are my dinosaur socks?" Leo's voice called from the bedroom, carrying that demanding urgency unique to a 5-year-old. "In the second drawer, the pile on the left," I said. I pushed myself up slowly, holding onto the sink, and pressed a hand to my aching lower back. As I stepped out of the bathroom, I saw Leo hopping down the hallway on one foot. "Not those ones, the blue ones with the claws," he pouted, his little face crunched up. I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was 7:20. "Sweetheart, the school bus gets here at 7:40. Let's just make do for today." "I don't want to make do." Leo plopped down on the floor, on the verge of starting one of his famous tantrums. I sighed and walked quickly toward his bedroom, or what passed for quickly for me, really just a slightly faster shuffle. After rummaging through the entire drawer, I finally found the pair of dinosaur claw socks tucked underneath a folded set of pajamas. "Here, lift your foot." I knelt to put the socks on for him, another sharp pain shooting through my knees. Once the socks were on, Leo's mood flipped instantly. He threw his arms around my neck, gave me a kiss, and chirped, "Grandma, you're the best." That single sentence made all the aches and pains feel worthwhile. I ruffled his curly hair and led him to the kitchen for breakfast. Daniel and Jessica were already at the table. Daniel was staring at his phone, a deep frown on his face, steam rising from the black coffee in front of him. Jessica was spreading peanut butter on a piece of toast. When she saw us, she glanced up at the clock. "Mom, you're running late again today," she said, her tone laced with a mild reprimand. "Daniel and I both have meetings at 8:30. "I'm sorry," I said quickly, placing a bowl of milk and cereal in front of Leo. Leo was looking for his socks and it took a little time. "Eat up, sweetie." "Cereal again?" Leo mumbled, but he picked up his spoon obediently. I stood to the side, waiting until they had all started eating before I ladled a small bowl of oatmeal for myself from the pot. It had been my habit for years to be the last one to sit down, so I could be ready to attend to anyone's needs. "Mom, we need to talk to you tonight," Daniel said suddenly, his eyes still glued to his phone. "After Leo's asleep." I nodded, but my stomach dropped. That serious tone of his usually didn't mean good news. The last time he'd spoken like that was to tell me he was being transferred to a different branch and we would have to move to this city. That was 3 years ago. I hadn't hesitated, packing up my life to move with them and help take care of the newborn Leo. All day, I couldn't stop thinking about what Daniel wanted to say. When I picked Leo up from his after-school program, I was so distracted while making dinner that I almost poured salt instead of sugar into the pot roast. After dinner, I put Leo to bed, then washed my hands and sat nervously on the living room couch. Daniel and Jessica sat across from me. They exchanged a look. "Mom," Daniel began, clearing his throat. "Jessica's parents are moving in with us next month." I blinked, the words not registering at first. "Oh, that's nice," I managed with a weak smile. "The more the merrier. How long are they staying?" "They're staying for good," Jessica chimed in, her voice as bright as if she were announcing wonderful news. "My parents are getting older, and there's no one to look after them back home. Besides, they can help with Leo, so you won't have to work so hard." I looked at Daniel, hoping for a clearer explanation, but he just nodded in agreement. "That's right, Mom. You deserve a rest." "Where will they stay?" I asked, looking around the 3-bedroom apartment. Daniel and Jessica had the master bedroom, Leo had the second bedroom, and the third was a study that I also used as my guest room. Daniel suddenly became hesitant, his fingers drumming nervously on his knee. "Well, we talked about it. The basement is empty, isn't it?" I froze. We were thinking of giving it a quick touch-up, putting in a bed and a dresser. His voice grew quieter. "We were hoping you'd be willing to make some space for us." Jessica added with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's just that you're always busy around the house anyway. The basement is cool in the summer and warm in the winter, and it's quiet." My fingers unconsciously tightened on the couch cushion. The basement. That damp, unfinished space. The few books I'd stored down there last year had all grown moldy. "Otherwise, you could just go stay under a bridge for a few days," Jessica added, and my son laughed. as if it were a hilarious joke. Daniel didn't laugh, but he didn't contradict his wife either. He just looked at me, his eyes filled with a complicated emotion I couldn't decipher. The silence in the room was deafening. I could hear my own heart beating, a slow, heavy drum against my ribs. "Of course," I finally said, my voice surprisingly calm. "It's not easy for you young people. I understand." Daniel visibly relaxed, his shoulders slumping in relief. "Mom, don't overthink it. It's just temporary. I'll go pack my things," I said, standing up and cutting him off. As I turned toward my room, I heard Jessica whisper to Daniel, "See? I told you your mom would be reasonable." I didn't look back. I closed the door, leaned against it, and took several deep breaths until the fog in front of my eyes cleared. In my 73 years, I had been through so much. I'd lost my father as a child and my husband in middle age. I raised my son all by myself. I sold my old family home to give Daniel the down payment for his first house. But never, not for a single moment, had I felt as useless as I did right now. I opened the closet and pulled out the old leather suitcase that had been with me for decades. My hands trembled as I packed. A few photos, a diary, some changes of clothes, my blood pressure medication. My entire life fit into a single suitcase. Outside, the moon hid behind the clouds, as if it couldn't bear to watch. I sat on the edge of the bed, stroking a photo of my late husband. "My love," I whispered. "Our son is all grown up. He doesn't need me anymore." The next morning, before anyone else was awake, I slipped quietly out of the apartment, but I didn't head for the basement. I walked straight toward the entrance of our gated community. Mike, the security guard, saw me pulling my suitcase and asked in surprise, "Eleanor, where are you off to so early?" "I'm going home," I said with a smile, my voice firmer than I expected. The morning mist enveloped the neighborhood. My cloth shoes were nearly silent on the damp pavement. Mike called a cab for me, watching with a worried expression as I loaded my old suitcase into the trunk. "Where are you headed, Eleanor? Should I let Daniel know?" "No need, Mike," I said, patting his shoulder. "I'm just going to visit an old friend. I'll be back in a few days." The white lie slipped out so naturally. The truth was, I had no idea where I was going. I only knew I couldn't stay in that basement, and I couldn't stay in a place that no longer felt like my home. The cab driver asked for my destination 3 times before I snapped out of my thoughts. "The train station, please." The scenery outside the window flew by, like fragmented memories flashing through my mind. When Daniel was in elementary school, I was always the first one at the school gate to pick him up on rainy days, terrified he would catch a cold. The year he was studying for the SATs, I woke up at 4 o'clock every morning to make him special oatmeal for brain food. When he got married, I sold the house I had lived in for 30 years just to give him a down payment in the big city. "That'll be $42, the driver's voice broke through my memories. The train station was a bustling hub of people coming and going. I stood in the middle of the main hall, suddenly feeling completely lost. Go back to my hometown? I didn't have a single relative left there. Friends? In recent years, I had lost touch with almost everyone to help Daniel raise his child. The world was so big, yet there seemed to be no place for a 73-year-old woman. "Ma'am, do you need some help?" A bright young voice asked beside me. I turned to see a girl in her early 20s with a high ponytail and sparkling eyes. A name tag on her chest read volunteer, Chloe. I'd like to buy a ticket," I said, my hand tightening on the handle of my suitcase. "Where are you going?" "I can help you at the kiosk," she said warmly, taking my arm. Her touch was warm and strong. I opened my mouth, and a name suddenly surfaced in my mind. Maple Creek. It was the small town where I'd spent my childhood, my mother's hometown. I hadn't been back in over 40 years. Maple Creek? Let me check. The girl tapped quickly on the machine. "There's a train leaving in 40 minutes, but you'll have to transfer in Lynchburg. The whole trip is about 5 hours. Do you want a regular seat or a sleeper car?" "A regular seat is fine," I said, pulling out my wallet. My fingers trembled as I took out my ID and bank card. "Ma'am, it's a long trip. A regular seat will be very tiring for you." "It's fine. I'm still pretty tough," I said with a faint smile. The girl hesitated for a moment but bought the ticket for me. Since there was some time before departure, she insisted on buying me a cup of hot milk at a nearby diner. "Are you traveling alone, ma'am?" she asked gently. I looked out the window at the hurried pedestrians and nodded softly. "Yes, alone. That's so brave. My grandmother won't even go to the grocery store by herself," she said, her smile revealing 2 small dimples. "My name is Chloe. I run a little bed and breakfast in Maple Creek called the Maple Creek Inn. If you're ever in town, you have to come find me." She handed me a business card with the inn's name and her contact information. I thanked her and tucked the card away, thinking I would probably never have a chance to use it. The boarding announcement began, and Chloe walked me all the way to the platform. As the train roared into the station, she gave me a sudden hug. "Ma'am, take care of yourself." In that moment, my eyes welled up, and I almost burst into tears. The warmth from a complete stranger meant more to me than what I'd received from the son I had worked so hard to raise. On the train, I sat by the window, watching the city's tall buildings gradually fade into the distance. My phone vibrated several times in my pocket. I took it out and saw missed calls and texts from Daniel. "Mom, where did you go? Stop being difficult and come back. Jessica's parents aren't coming until next week. You don't have to move out in such a hurry." Each message felt like a needle poking at my heart. I turned off the phone and closed my eyes, pretending to sleep. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" a familiar voice asked. I opened my eyes and was shocked to see Chloe standing in the aisle, pulling a large suitcase. "You're? What a coincidence. I decided at the last minute to head back to Maple Creek to take care of some things," she said, sitting down beside me naturally. "It seems like we were meant to meet." During the journey, Chloe was like a cheerful little sparrow, chattering on about the changes in Maple Creek, telling me funny stories about her inn, and explaining why she left her corporate job in the city to start a business back home. Her energy was infectious, and I gradually relaxed, even sharing some of my own childhood memories of the town. "Ma'am, you tell stories so vividly," she said, her eyes shining. "If you're willing, you could come to my inn and tell the guests stories about old Maple Creek. I'd pay you for it." I just smiled and shook my head. At my age, who wants to listen to these old stories? "That's not true at all," she said earnestly. "People from the city love hearing these authentic, local stories. Please, think about it." When the train stopped in Lynchburg, my phone rang again. It was an unknown number this time. I hesitated, then answered it. "Mom." Daniel's voice was frantic and angry. "Where in the world are you? Why aren't you answering your phone?" I was silent for a few seconds. "I'm on a train, going back to my hometown for a visit." "What hometown?" "We don't have a hometown anymore." His voice suddenly dropped. "Mom, are you upset? We can talk about the basement." "There's nothing to talk about," I said, watching the passengers hurry on and off the train outside my window. "You need to take care of your family. I just want some time to myself." "But..." His voice held a panic I hadn't heard in years. "Mom, when are you coming back?" "We'll see," I said, and hung up, my fingers trembling slightly. Chloe pretended not to have heard my conversation and handed me a bottle of water. "Here, ma'am, have some water." After the transfer, the train car was less crowded, and I finally had some space to myself. I took out the framed photo of my husband from my bag and gently wiped the glass. "My love," I whispered, "our son is all grown up. He has his own family now. He doesn't need me anymore." The man in the photo was still young, his smile gentle. It was taken on his 40th birthday, the last photo he ever took. 3 months later, a car accident took him away, leaving me and a 15-year-old Daniel to fend for ourselves. I remember when Daniel came home for winter break during his first year of college, excitedly telling me he had a girlfriend named Jessica. "Mom," he'd said, "her family's from the city. Her dad's a city official. They're very well off. I can still see the sparkle in his eyes." I was so happy for him then, so proud that my son was going to make something of himself. At their wedding, I wore a silk dress I'd saved up for half a year to buy. Seeing my son in his sharp suit and Jessica in her white wedding gown, I felt that all the hardship in my life had been worth it. Now arriving at Maple Creek, the train's announcement system startled me out of my memories. As I got off, Chloe insisted on carrying my suitcase. Ma'am, it's so late. Do you have a place to stay? Why don't you come to my inn for now? I wanted to refuse, but looking at the completely unfamiliar station and the darkening sky, I nodded. The Maple Creek Inn was more beautiful than I had imagined. It was a renovated old wooden house with a yard full of flowers and plants. Chloe gave me a south-facing room. Pushing open the window, I could see the outline of the distant green hills. "Ma'am, you get some rest. I'll bring dinner up in a little while," she said, closing the door softly. I sat on the edge of the bed and finally allowed the tears to fall. 73 years old and homeless. How had my life come to this? The morning sun filtered through the sheer curtains, casting a soft glow on the bed. I opened my eyes, momentarily confused about where I was. Then I saw the note Chloe had left on the nightstand. "Ma'am, I've gone into town for some errands. We'll be back at noon. There's food in the fridge. Please help yourself." I remembered then that I was in Maple Creek. I pushed open the window, and the fresh mountain air rushed in, carrying the scent of earth and grass. I took a deep breath, and a long-lost sense of peace washed over me. How many years had it been since I'd breathed air this pure? Not since I moved to the city with Daniel. In the kitchen, I found eggs, greens, and noodles, and made a simple noodle soup. As I ate, an idea suddenly popped into my head. I should go see the old house my mother left behind. The house in my memory was on the west side of town, a 2-story brick building with a small yard. After my mother passed away, the house sat empty for a while, and I later heard it was sold to a local teacher. 40 years had passed. I wondered if it was still standing. Relying on a faint memory, I slowly walked toward the west end of town. Maple Creek had changed a lot. There were newly paved concrete roads and neat storefronts. I couldn't find any trace of the old town. Just as I was about to give up, a small alley caught my eye. It was the shortcut to the old house. My heart began to beat faster as I turned into the alley. At the end of the lane, the brick house still stood. The exterior walls had been repainted, but I recognized the unique design of the porch immediately. The yard gate was ajar. I hesitated for a moment, then gently pushed it open. In the yard, a white-haired man was bent over, trimming some flowers. He straightened up at the sound. "Who's there?" he asked, squinting toward the gate. I stood frozen in place. That wrinkled face, those bright, alert eyes, it was Arthur, my childhood neighbor. He was 5 years older than me. "Ellie?" he whispered. The shears in his hand clattered to the ground. "Arthur." My voice was barely audible. Arthur rushed over in 3 strides, looking me up and down. "It really is you. I heard you married and moved away. I came back for a visit." 1,000 words were stuck in my throat, but that was all I could manage. He ushered me inside, clumsily making tea. The furniture in the house was both familiar and strange. The old dining table my mother used was still in the same spot, but the walls were covered with photos I didn't recognize. "I bought this house the year after you left," Arthur said, pushing a teacup toward me. I never had the heart to change it much, just added some new furniture. I held the warm cup, the heat spreading from my fingertips through my body. Arthur told me his wife had passed away from an illness 10 years ago. His son worked in the state capitol and rarely came back. We talked about people we both knew, who had passed, who had moved away, whose children had become successful. We chatted away until noon. Suddenly, my phone rang. It was Daniel. "Mom, where are you? It's been 3 days. You're not answering calls or texts. Do you know how worried I am?" His voice was filled with an obvious anger. "I'm in Maple Creek." "I'm safe," I said calmly. "Maple Creek? Isn't that Grandma's hometown? What are you doing there?" His tone softened. "Mom, are you still upset?" "Jessica's just blunt. She didn't mean any harm." "Daniel," I interrupted, "I want to live on my own for a while." There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. "Then what about Leo? He misses you." My heart clenched. Leo, the grandson I had raised. He must be asking where Grandma went. "We can video call," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm not coming back for a while." "Mom!" His voice suddenly rose. "What is it you want?" "I already said we can discuss the basement." "It's not about the basement," I said, looking at the old locust tree outside the window. My sister and I had planted it when we were children. It's about me needing my own space. After hanging up, I noticed Arthur looking at me thoughtfully. Trouble with your son? I nodded with a bitter smile and briefly explained what had happened. After hearing the story, Arthur slammed his hand on the table. That's outrageous. You raised him, and this is how he treats you? He has his own difficulties, I said, defending my son out of habit. Difficulties, my foot. Arthur's whiskers bristled with anger. Ellie, you can stay with me. I have plenty of room. Let's see when that boy of yours comes to apologize. I shook my head. Arthur, thank you for your kindness, but I think I want to rent my own place. Rent? What for? He said, his eyes wide. Your cousin's old house on the east side is empty. His son settled in Australia and asked me to look after it. If you don't mind it, you can move in. Just pay a little something for rent. And just like that afternoon, Arthur took me to see my cousin's house. It was a small one-bedroom house with a yard. It was simple but clean and tidy. Most importantly, it was very close to the town's community center. Back at the Maple Creek Inn that evening, I told Chloe my decision. She was both surprised and happy. That's wonderful, Eleanor. Now I can come visit you often. While packing my suitcase, I noticed I had over a dozen missed calls, all from Daniel. There were also several texts. Mom, stop this. Please come back. Leo won't stop crying for his grandma. Jessica's parents are arriving tomorrow, and the house is a mess. The last message made my heart turn completely cold. Mom, you're making things very difficult for me. My in-laws will think there's something wrong with our family. I didn't reply. I just silently switched my phone to silent mode. The next morning, with Chloe's help, I moved into my cousin's old house. Arthur brought over some furniture and daily necessities from his own house, and soon the little cottage felt warm and cozy. That afternoon, Arthur took me to register at the senior center. The director was a warm, middle-aged woman. When she heard I was a retired teacher, she immediately invited me to join the painting class and the book club. Eleanor, we're actually looking for an English conversation tutor, she said, her eyes lighting up. There are a few kids in town who want to learn English, if you have time. I hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Teaching had been my life's passion. After retiring, I had to let it go to help Daniel with his son. Back in my little cottage that evening, I finally called Daniel back. He answered almost immediately. Mom, how long are you going to keep this up? Daniel, I said calmly, I've decided to stay in Maple Creek for a while. What? His voice was filled with disbelief. Then what about us? What about Leo? You have your own lives. I took a deep breath. And it's time for me to have mine. Mom, his voice suddenly cracked. Are you leaving us? The question stabbed me like a knife. I closed my eyes, and an image of Daniel as a little boy appeared before me, the little boy who used to cling to my leg and say, Mommy, don't go. Daniel, Mommy will always love you, my voice trembled. But I can't live for you anymore. After hanging up, I sat by the window, looking at Maple Creek under the moonlight. 60 years ago, at this very window, I watched my mother sew my wedding dress. 60 years later, I had returned to find my own life again. On the third day after moving into my cousin's old house, I woke up early, planning to go to the town's morning market to buy some necessities. When I opened the door, I found Arthur already waiting outside the yard, holding a bamboo basket. Morning, Ellie. Figured you were going to the market. Let's go together, he said with a grin. I was a little surprised, but I didn't refuse. At the market, Arthur expertly navigated me through the stalls, greeting people here and there. Hey, Arthur, who's this? The woman selling tofu asked, looking me over curiously. My little sister, Eleanor. A retired teacher just came back from the city, Arthur introduced me naturally. I opened my mouth to correct him, but ended up just letting it be. By the time we were done, I had not only bought everything I needed, but also received many curious glances and friendly smiles. On the way back, Arthur suddenly said, Ellie, there's a painting class at the community center this afternoon. Want to check it out? A painting class? I hesitated. I haven't held a paintbrush in decades. What's there to be afraid of? It's not like they're asking you to be a professional artist, he laughed heartily. Just think of it as a way to pass the time. That afternoon, I rummaged through my suitcase and found a simple silk dress. Daniel had bought it for me for my 60th birthday, but I'd never had a chance to wear it. I looked in the mirror, pinning my white hair into a neat bun and applying a light touch of lipstick. When Arthur saw me, his eyes visibly brightened. "Well now, who is this lovely young lady?" I gave him a playful tap. "Oh, you old flirt." The community center already had a dozen or so seniors sitting around. They greeted us as we walked in. The art teacher was a young woman, handing out supplies. "Today we're doing a still life," she said, pointing to a vase of flowers and some fruit on a table. "Everyone just do what feels right." I picked up a pencil, my hand shaking slightly. The last time I had drawn anything was when Daniel was in elementary school, helping him with an art project. The moment the pencil tip touched the paper, a long-forgotten sense of peace washed over me. 2 hours later, the teacher walked over to look at my drawing, her eyes widening in surprise. "Eleanor, have you studied art before?" I shook my head. I loved it when I was young. But then, for life, for my child, I gave up all my hobbies. "You have a real talent," the teacher said with sincere admiration. "Your composition and shading are very professional." Arthur leaned in to look and nodded in agreement. "Ellie, you've been holding out on us." On the way home, I was in an unusually good mood. Arthur suggested a walk by the river. The Maple Creek River shimmered under the setting sun, as beautiful as a painting. "Remember? We used to swim here when we were kids," Arthur said, pointing to a bend in the river. "You were always too scared to get in the water, so I told you there were ghosts in the river." "Arthur!" I stared at him, wide-eyed. "So that was you. You gave me nightmares for a week." He roared with laughter, the wrinkles around his eyes crinkling together. Looking at him, I suddenly remembered something. "Arthur, can you help me figure something out? Is my retirement pension enough to live on in Maple Creek?" He turned serious. "You were a senior teacher before you retired. You should be getting at least $4,000 or $5,000 a month now, right? In Maple Creek, you can live very comfortably on $2,000. I nodded, feeling reassured. After Daniel got married, my pension card had been with him. He gave me some spending money each month, saying he was helping me manage it. When I left this time, I made sure to bring my ID so I could get a new card. The next day, I went to the bank in town and reported my pension card lost and requested a replacement. When I checked the balance, I was surprised to find nearly $200,000 in the account. This was what I had saved up over many years of frugal living, what Daniel had always said he was investing for me. "Do you want to withdraw it all?" the teller asked. I shook my head. "Just $20,000 for now." That money was enough for me to start a new life. Holding the new bank card and the cash, I felt a long-lost sense of control. I passed by an art supply store and bought a professional set of paints and some tutorial books. I saw a fabric store and picked out a few yards of simple cotton fabric. I wanted to make myself a new dress. Back at my little house, I started arranging things with excitement. I hung up the sketch I did yesterday, set up my new art supplies on the table, and even changed the bedsheets to a lavender color I liked. This little cottage was finally starting to feel like a home. Just then, my phone rang. It was Daniel. I took a deep breath and answered. "Mom, when on earth are you coming back?" His voice was weary. "The house is a complete disaster. Aren't Jessica's parents there?" I tried to keep my tone even. "They're here," he lowered his voice. "But Leo won't eat a single bite of his grandmother's cooking. He's been crying for you all day. And Jessica and her mom are always arguing. I'm caught in the middle." I pictured the chaotic scene and, inappropriately, felt a small urge to laugh. "Daniel," I said softly, "you're 38 years old. It's time you learned how to handle your family's conflicts." "Mom?" His voice suddenly took on a pleading tone. "I was wrong, okay? I shouldn't have suggested the basement. Just please come back." My heart softened for a moment, but then it hardened again. This wasn't the first time. Whenever Daniel made a mistake, as long as he acted pitiful and apologized, I would give in. But not this time. "Daniel, Mom loves you," I said calmly. "But I need my own life, my own space. You have your family, and I should have my own later years." There was a long silence on the other end. Then what about Leo? He cries for his grandma every day. Hearing Leo's name made my heart ache. We can video chat on the weekends, and when he has a break from school, you can bring him to visit me, I said after a pause. The air in Maple Creek is good. It's healthy for him. I hung up the phone and sat at my newly arranged desk, opening a painting tutorial. The sunlight streamed through the gauze curtains onto the paper, and the soft scratching of my pencil blended with the chirping of birds outside. In that moment, I felt a strange sense of peace and fulfillment. That evening, Arthur knocked on my door to take me to the community center, saying there was a surprise. It turned out, the center's director, hearing my English was good, had arranged for a few children from the town to meet me. Eleanor, these kids want to learn English, but we don't have a professional teacher in town. The director looked at me expectantly. Would you be able to? I looked at the handful of 10-year-olds in front of me. Their eyes shone with a thirst for knowledge, just like the countless students I had taught over the years. All right, I heard myself say. The first lesson was very casual. I mainly wanted to assess the children's basic level. Surprisingly, although their pronunciation was off and their grammar was messy, their vocabulary was quite good. We learned online, a girl named Rain told me. We want to get into the top middle school in the county, and English is a required subject. After class, the director held my hand and thanked me profusely. Eleanor, you're a real lifesaver. The children in this town desperately need a good teacher like you. On the way home, Arthur kept looking at me with a smile. What are you smiling at? I asked, feeling a little self-conscious. Nothing. I'm just happy, he said, walking ahead with his hands behind his back. Seeing your eyes light up again, just like when you were young. That night, I slept more soundly than I had in years. In my dreams, there was no city noise, no family quarrels, only the green hills and clear waters of Maple Creek and the sound of children reading aloud. On Saturday morning, I got a call from Chloe. Eleanor, I have a few foreign guests here, and they're really interested in traditional Chinese culture. Could you possibly come and help me out? Please, it would be a huge favor. I wanted to decline, but she sounded so desperate that I agreed. I put on that simple silk dress and took a local taxi to the Maple Creek Inn. In the courtyard, 3 blonde-haired, blue-eyed foreigners were gathered around a pot of orchids, discussing something. Chloe stood to one side, looking helpless. When she saw me, she ran over as if I were her savior. Eleanor, thank you so much, she whispered. They're university professors from America, studying Eastern cultures. My English just isn't good enough. I smoothed my dress and walked toward the foreign guests with a smile. Good morning. Welcome to Maple Creek Town. The 3 professors turned in surprise. One of them, a woman with glasses, responded warmly. You speak English? For the next 2 hours, I gave them a tour of the inn, introducing the history and culture of Maple Creek. When they learned I had been an English teacher, they became even more excited, asking numerous questions about local customs. Eleanor, your English is fantastic. The professor with glasses, Catherine, praised. Your pronunciation is better than many young people's. I studied English in college in the 1960s. Our textbooks were from the British BBC, I explained. Then I taught English for 30 years. I suppose it's an occupational hazard. At noon, Chloe prepared a lavish lunch. During the meal, the professors repeatedly complimented my knowledge and eloquence. As they were leaving, Professor Catherine held my hand and said, Eleanor, if you ever have the chance to come to the United States, you must contact us. After seeing the guests off, Chloe hugged me excitedly. Eleanor, you were amazing. They said they want to bring their students here next year, and they specifically requested you as their guide. I felt a little embarrassed. It was nothing, really. No, Eleanor, this is a business opportunity. Chloe's eyes shone. More and more foreign tourists are looking for in-depth travel experiences, but language and cultural barriers are a big problem. If you're willing, I'd like to hire you as our inn's cultural consultant, specifically for these high-end clients. I was stunned. Me? An old woman? Age is not an issue, Chloe said seriously. Your knowledge, your grace, and your language skills are exactly what we need. I can pay you per session, or we can work out a profit-sharing arrangement. I shook my head. The money isn't the issue, it's just. I never thought, at 73, that I'd have a job opportunity. Will you consider it? Chloe asked earnestly. We have a French couple coming next week. They're particularly interested in the tea ceremony. The tea ceremony? My eyes lit up. When I was young, I had studied the authentic tea ceremony with a Japanese teacher. Although I hadn't practiced in years, the foundation was still there. I can try. I finally nodded. But you'll have to give me some time to prepare. Back at my cottage, I dug out my long-treasured tea set and went into town to buy some high-quality green tea. For the next few days, I stayed home, practicing the tea ceremony movements, even making Arthur my guest a few times. Goodness, Ellie, how many more hidden talents do you have? He asked in amazement, sipping the tea I had prepared. On Friday afternoon, while I was teaching English conversation at the community center, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello, is this Eleanor? A young woman asked. I'm a reporter from the Maple Creek Gazette. I'd like to interview you about your experiences with senior education. It turned out the center director had passed my story along to the local media. I wanted to refuse, but thinking it might help other seniors, I agreed. On Saturday, the reporter, a young woman in her 20s, named Lisa, arrived as scheduled. Throughout the interview, she kept expressing her admiration. Eleanor, you're incredible. Starting over at 70-something, teaching English, painting, performing the tea ceremony, you're an inspiration to us all. After the interview, she asked to take a few photos. I changed into the silk dress, and a picture of me arranging the tea set in my yard was captured by the camera. On Sunday, the French couple arrived. I wore a newly made navy blue dress and greeted them in English with a few French phrases mixed in. When I performed the tea ceremony for them in the tea room, their movements fluid and graceful, they were utterly captivated, constantly taking pictures. Madam Eleanor, the husband said excitedly, this is magnificent. You are a true cultural treasure. Chloe stood by, beaming. After they left, she handed me an envelope. Eleanor, this is your payment for today. I opened it and found $2,000 inside. So much? They were thrilled. They've already booked a trip for next spring and specifically requested you, Chloe said excitedly. Eleanor, you're our star attraction now. On my way home, I felt light and happy. As I passed through the town center, a familiar figure made me stop in my tracks. It was Daniel. He was standing in front of the post office, looking down at his phone. I instinctively ducked behind a tree, my heart pounding. Why was he here? Was he looking for me? Should I see him? While I hesitated, Daniel looked up, his gaze sweeping in my direction. I quickly turned and hurried down another street. After walking some distance, I secretly looked back and saw Daniel still standing there, as if waiting for someone. When I got home, I locked the door, my mind in turmoil. Daniel had found his way to Maple Creek. Was he here to persuade me to go back? Or... I shook my head, forcing myself to calm down. Whatever his reason for being here, I wasn't ready to face him yet. That night, my phone lit up with a text from Daniel. Mom, I came to Maple Creek today to find you, but I couldn't. I heard you're quite famous in town now. Everyone has wonderful things to say about you. I miss you. The report in the Maple Creek Gazette was published on an ordinary Wednesday morning. I was sitting in the yard, practicing tea ceremony movements, when Arthur burst in, waving a newspaper. Ellie, you're in the paper, he exclaimed like a little kid. The front page, with a big picture. I took the newspaper and saw the photo of me in my dress, preparing tea, printed prominently below the fold. The headline read, A Second Spring for a 70-something English teacher. Retirement is not the end, but a new beginning. The article spanned 2 full pages, detailing my new life in Maple Creek and even mentioning the cultural experience activities at the inn. Sure enough, before noon, my little cottage received its first wave of visitors. First came a few seniors from town, curious to meet the local celebrity. Then came several parents, asking if I was accepting English students. Finally, even the town mayor paid a visit to thank me for bringing honor to Maple Creek. Chloe called in the afternoon, her voice trembling with excitement. Eleanor, our phone has been ringing off the hook. It's all people who read the article and want to experience your tea ceremony class. I held the phone, momentarily speechless. This sudden attention left me both thrilled and terrified. For 73 years, I had been an ordinary, unknown person, a wife, a mother, a teacher. I had never imagined I would one day become the center of attention. Eleanor? Are you still there? Chloe's voice brought me back to reality. I'm here. I took a deep breath. Chloe, I'm not sure I can handle so many people. Don't worry, she said immediately. We can screen the guests and control the numbers. And, she lowered her voice, we can double the price. No, triple it. Money wasn't my main concern, but the thought of sharing a culture I loved with more people made me agree. The next morning, as I was about to leave for my class at the community center, my phone rang. The screen displayed Son. My heart immediately started racing. Since our near encounter in town, Daniel hadn't contacted me. Mom. Daniel's voice was a bit hoarse after I answered. I saw the paper. I was silent for a moment. Oh, Mom, are you really teaching English? And doing tea ceremony performances? His tone was filled with disbelief. Yes, occasionally, I replied curtly. That reporter, she said, you're a model for retired teachers. He paused. Mom, I didn't know you could do all these things. That sentence was like a tiny needle, gently pricking my heart. Of course, he didn't know, because he had never truly cared about his mother's life or hobbies. In his eyes, I was just the old woman who did his laundry, cooked his meals, and watched his child. Daniel, I said softly, we all have our own lives to live. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Leo misses you, he finally said. Can we video call? At the mention of my grandson, my heart softened. All right. Tonight. After hanging up, I hurried to the community center. The classroom was already packed, not just with the usual children, but also with many unfamiliar faces who had come after reading the article. Eleanor's here, the director announced cheerfully. Looks like we'll need more chairs for our English class today. The class went smoothly. Despite the larger number of students, my years of teaching experience allowed me to handle it with ease. After class, several parents surrounded me, all wanting to invite me to speak at their schools. On the way home, my phone rang again. It was another unknown number. Hello, is this Eleanor? I'm a reporter from the county television station. We'd like to schedule an interview with you. The next few days, my life was turned completely upside down. After the county television interview aired, the city media came calling. The Maple Creek Inn was booked solid for the next 3 months. Even the County Education Bureau sent representatives to invite me to participate in a rural teacher training program. Arthur voluntarily became my manager, helping me screen invitations and arrange my schedule. Ellie, you're a celebrity now, he joked. Fame brought not only attention, but also unexpected reunions. On a Friday evening, a white-haired woman knocked on my door. It took me a few seconds to recognize her as Patty, a student I had taught 40 years ago. Mrs. Eleanor, she exclaimed, grasping my hands. I saw you on TV and came right away. You haven't changed a bit. We talked late into the night, reminiscing about the old days. Patty was now the principal of a middle school, and she sincerely invited me to come and train her teachers. Eleanor, your teaching methods have benefited me my entire life, she said earnestly. The young teachers today really need guidance from a veteran like you. After Patty left, I stood in the yard, looking up at the starry sky. In just a few short months, my life had changed dramatically. From a burden to my son, I had become the respected Eleanor. From an anonymous old woman, I had become a minor celebrity and a guardian of culture. On Saturday evening, I had my scheduled video call with Daniel's family. On the screen, Leo shouted "Grandma," excitedly. Jessica's expression was a bit awkward, while Daniel's eyes held a complex emotion that pained my heart. "Grandma, you were on TV!" Leo danced around. Daddy cried when he watched it. "What nonsense are you talking?" Daniel quickly interrupted his son, his face flushing red. I pretended not to hear and asked Leo about his schoolwork. After about 15 minutes, Jessica suddenly interjected, "Mom, when are you coming back for a visit? Leo really misses you." The daughter-in-law who had once suggested I live under a bridge now had an obvious tone of appeasement in her voice. "I'll come back for a visit when I have time," I replied calmly. Shortly after the video call ended, Daniel sent a text message. "Mom, I'm proud of you. Those 5 simple words made tears stream down my face. The busyness that came with fame made me temporarily forget my family troubles. Until one rainy night, a frantic knocking on the door interrupted my tea ceremony practice. "Who is it?" I asked, putting down my tea bowl and walking to the door. "Ellie, open up, quick!" It was Arthur's voice, but unusually urgent. I pulled open the door to see him standing in the rain, his face deathly pale, his right hand pressed tightly against his chest. "Arthur, what's wrong?" I quickly helped support him as he swayed. "Chest. Hurts." He squeezed out a few words, cold sweat mixing with rain on his forehead. I immediately realized the seriousness of the situation. While helping him into the house, I dialed 911. While waiting for the ambulance, I had him lie flat on the couch and gave him some nitroglycerin pills I found in his pocket. On the table. Arthur pointed weakly toward his house. I ran through the rain into his home. On his cluttered table, I found a medicine bottle and a stack of letters. The one on top was clearly addressed, "To my dearest Ellie." But this was no time for curiosity. I grabbed the medicine bottle and ran back. The ambulance arrived quickly. The paramedics did a quick examination of Arthur. "Heart attack. We need to get him to the hospital immediately," the lead medic said grimly. Without a second thought, I got into the ambulance with them. All the way there, Arthur held my hand tightly, as if I were his only lifeline. The emergency room at the county hospital was brightly lit, with doctors and nurses bustling around Arthur. I was asked to wait in the hallway. My clothes were soaked through, and I shivered from the cold, but I barely noticed. "Family?" a doctor asked as he came out. "I'm his friend." I hurried forward. "How is he?" "He needs surgery immediately. Can you contact his family?" Only then did I remember to call Arthur's son. I found the name Benjamin in his contacts and dialed. The phone rang for a long time before it was answered. "Who is it?" a groggy, impatient voice said. "It's the middle of the night." "Is this Benjamin?" "I'm Eleanor, your father's friend. He's in the hospital and needs surgery right away." "What?" Benjamin's voice cleared up a bit. "Is it serious?" "I'm at a conference in the capital. I have an important client meeting tomorrow." My heart sank. The doctor said it's very serious. It's a heart attack. "Okay." He hesitated. "I'll see if I can change my flight. Can you please help take care of things for now?" "Don't worry about the medical bills. My dad has health insurance." After hanging up, I stood in the hallway, suddenly feeling a deep sense of sorrow. Is this the fate of our generation? We give everything for our children, only to be less important than a client meeting. The surgery lasted for 3 hours. When the doctor finally came out and announced that the operation was successful, my anxious heart finally calmed a bit. "The patient needs to be hospitalized for observation for at least 2 weeks, the doctor said, taking off his mask. "And you are?" "A friend," I repeated. "I'll take care of him." By the time I finished the hospital admission procedures, the sky was already light. I sat by Arthur's bedside, looking at his pale face, my mind racing. That stack of letters addressed to me kept flashing in my mind, along with the complicated look in Daniel's eyes during our video call. A nurse came in to change the IV drip and kindly reminded me, "Ma'am, you should go home, change your clothes, and get some rest. You'll collapse if you keep this up." I shook my head. "I'll wait a little longer. Until his son gets here." Benjamin didn't arrive until noon, dressed in a suit and still carrying his briefcase. He saw me and gave a polite but distant nod. "You must be Eleanor. Thank you for taking care of my father. Aren't you going to ask how your father is doing?" I couldn't help but ask. "Oh, the doctor already told me," he said, checking his watch. "I have another meeting this afternoon, so I have to get back to the capital. I've already hired a caregiver, so you don't need to worry about the cost." I stared in shock at this successful middle-aged man, unable to understand how he could be so cold to his own father. "Ben," Arthur called weakly from the bed. "Dad, you're awake?" Benjamin walked over, but kept a certain distance. "The doctor said you're fine. Get some rest. I have to go. Work is busy." A flicker of disappointment crossed Arthur's eyes, but was quickly hidden. "Go on then. Work is important." After Benjamin left, the room fell silent. After a long while, Arthur gave a bitter smile. "Sorry you had to see that. I raised a successful son." Arthur. I didn't know how to comfort him. Ellie, do you remember what we used to say when we were kids? He suddenly asked. You said you wanted to be a teacher, and I said I wanted to be a doctor, to save lives. I nodded, my memory taking me back 60 years. We were so innocent then, thinking the future held endless possibilities. In the end, I was a mailman for 30 years, and you became a teacher, he smiled. That's life, isn't it? Arthur, I hesitated, but I had to ask, those letters on your table? His smile froze, and a faint blush appeared on his old face. You saw them? I admitted it softly. The room fell silent again. Outside, the sun after the rain shone through the window, casting mottled shadows on the floor. I've been writing them for 60 years, he finally said, his voice barely a whisper. Ever since the day you got married and moved to the county, I never sent a single one. My heart clenched tightly. 60 years. How many unspoken words? How many emotions buried by time? Arthur, don't say anything, he shook his head gently. It's fine, just like this. I held his hand, feeling the rough warmth that time had left, no words needed. The silent understanding of that moment was worth more than 1,000 words. That afternoon, when I went to Arthur's house to get a change of clothes for him, I finally looked at those letters carefully. The earliest envelope had yellowed with age, postmarked 1963. The most recent one was from last month, not even sealed in an envelope yet. I carefully opened the one on top. The familiar handwriting jumped out at me. My dearest Ellie, I saw a young couple by the river today, and it reminded me of that summer. You were washing clothes by the river in a blue dress, and I was hiding behind a willow tree, watching you. The sunlight filtered through the leaves and fell on your shoulders like scattered gold. I heard your grandson is sick. Don't worry too much. Children recover quickly. You always worry too much. Remember to take care of yourself. Forever yours, Arthur. The letter slipped from my trembling hands. For 60 years, he had been by my side in this way, and I had never known. When I returned to the hospital, Arthur saw my red, swollen eyes and smiled knowingly. You read them all. I nodded, tears welling up again. Why didn't you tell me sooner? You had your own life. I didn't want to disturb you, he said calmly. Just being able to see you happy was enough. His words were like a key, unlocking a long-sealed drawer in my heart. Yes, to love someone doesn't mean you have to possess them. To care for someone doesn't mean you have to interfere. This kind of silent, protective love. Wasn't that how I felt about Daniel? That evening, I sent Daniel a text. Are you free? I'd like to talk. He called back almost instantly. Mom, what's wrong? Hearing my son's familiar voice, my nose tingled. Nothing. I just wanted to tell you that Mom will always love you, no matter where you are or what you do. There was a silence on the other end for a few seconds. Mom, what's going on? Are you not feeling well? His voice was filled with worry. No, I'm fine, I said, wiping away a tear. I just suddenly wanted to tell you. After hanging up, I looked at Arthur in the hospital bed. He was sleeping peacefully. Outside, a bright moon hung high in the sky, its cool light spilling onto the hospital floor like a thin layer of silver dust. On the 5th day of Arthur's hospitalization, his children finally gathered in the hospital room, not to visit, but to discuss their father's arrangements after he was discharged. I didn't want to get involved in their family matters, but Arthur insisted I stay. Ellie is not an outsider, he told his children. She understands what I want better than you do. Benjamin and his sister, Sarah, argued back and forth. The main point of contention was who would take their father in. My house is small, there's no extra room, Sarah said firmly. Besides, my mother-in-law lives with us. I'm busy enough as it is. I work in the capital. I can't just leave Dad alone in an apartment, Benjamin retorted. What about a nursing home? The new one in Maple Creek is supposed to be nice. I was shocked as they discussed their father's life as if he were an object. Arthur just leaned against the headboard in silence, his eyes dim. I'm not going anywhere, he finally said, his voice soft but firm. I can take care of myself. Dad, Benjamin said impatiently, the doctor said you need to rest and not overexert yourself. I can hire a caregiver, Arthur said, glancing at me. Ellie found one for me. She'll come for 4 hours a day. The siblings exchanged a look. Sarah suddenly turned to me. Eleanor, I hear your son lives in the city. Why don't you live with him? The sharp question was like a knife. Arthur immediately defended me. Sarah, what kind of way is that to talk? I'm just curious, Sarah said pointedly. Shouldn't elderly parents live with their children? I took a deep breath and answered calmly. Because I choose to live independently. All right, Arthur patted the side of the bed. My situation is settled. You two go on with your busy lives. You don't need to worry about me. The siblings left in a huff. As they were leaving, Benjamin muttered, He's just worried about his pension money. After the door closed, Arthur deflated like a popped balloon, slumping back onto the bed. Sorry you had to see that, he said with a bitter smile. I raised a pair of ungrateful kids. I held his hand, speechless. This scene reminded me of Daniel. At least he wasn't that cold-hearted yet. Or maybe it was just a matter of time. That afternoon, I found some time to go to the community center to teach my English class. After class, the director told me mysteriously, Eleanor, last week, a man from the city came and secretly listened to your class. What kind of man? My heart tightened. Around 40, wore glasses, very well dressed, she recalled. He stood by the back door and listened for the entire class. When he left, his eyes were red. Daniel. It must have been him. My heart raced. He came to Maple Creek, so why didn't he contact me? Why did he listen to my class in secret? With a head full of questions, I returned to the hospital. As I reached the door of the room, I heard a familiar voice inside. It was Daniel. I stopped and peeked through the small window on the door. I saw my son sitting by Arthur's bed, the two of them talking. Daniel's back was to me, so I couldn't see his expression, but Arthur's face was unusually serious. You don't understand your mother, Arthur's voice drifted out. She's lived her whole life for others. Now, she's finally found her own worth. Daniel's head was bowed, his shoulders trembling slightly. Young man, if you know you're wrong, you should fix it, Arthur patted his shoulder. Your mother has always kept you in her heart. Don't make her wait too long. I gently pushed the door open. The conversation stopped abruptly. Daniel turned around, and I saw his face was tear-streaked. Mom. He stood up, as helpless as a child who had done something wrong. I stood where I was, not knowing what to say. It had been 3 months. Since that night, when he asked me to move to the basement, this was the first time we had seen each other face to face. I'll go get some hot water, Arthur said, grabbing a thermos and tactfully leaving the room to give us some space. Silence filled the hospital room. Daniel kept his head down, nervously twisting his fingers. I stood by the window, watching the patients strolling in the garden below. Mom, he finally broke the silence. I was wrong. 3 simple words, but they made my nose tingle. I didn't respond, just waited for him to continue. I've been in Maple Creek for 3 days, he said, his voice choked with emotion. I watched your class. I went to the house where you're staying, and I talked to a lot of people in town. I turned around, surprised. I didn't know. He wiped his face. I didn't know your English was so good. I didn't know you could do the tea ceremony. I didn't know you were such a popular teacher. Because you never asked, I said softly. He looked up sharply, the pain in his eyes hurting me. Mom, the person I've wronged the most in my life is you. I walked over to him and stroked his hair, just as I did when he was a little boy. It was already starting to thin. My son was beginning to face his own midlife crisis. Daniel, Mom doesn't blame you, I said gently. Life is stressful. I understand. No, you shouldn't understand. He suddenly became agitated. How could I have treated you like that, asking you to live in the basement, and letting Jessica say those things? His voice was filled with self-loathing. I had him sit down and gently patted his back, just like I used to when he had nightmares. Mom, life has been so hard since you left, he sobbed. The house is a mess. Leo cries all the time. Jessica and her mom fight every day. Your in-laws are still living there? I asked. He nodded, rubbing his face wearily. They sold their house back home. They said they were coming to help us, but actually, he trailed off. But the meaning was clear. Daniel, I held his hand. Everyone has their own life to live. Your in-laws meant well, but maybe their methods weren't right. Mom, he looked at me with red eyes. Can you forgive me? Silly boy, I touched his face. Mom was never mad at you. He threw himself into my arms and cried like a child. I held my middle-aged son, a mix of emotions swirling inside me. In that moment, I suddenly understood the meaning behind Arthur's letters. Sometimes, love is just about being there, without expecting anything in return. When Daniel had cried enough, he wiped his tears, his expression becoming firm. Mom, I've made a decision. First, my in-laws have to move out. They can rent a place nearby. Second, your room will always be your room. You're welcome home anytime. Third, he paused. I want to bring Leo to see you every week. Let him learn English from his grandma. Learn the tea ceremony. Learn how to be a good person. I smiled and nodded, a warm feeling spreading through my chest. I had waited for this moment for so long, and it was worth it. By the way, I suddenly remembered, how do you know Arthur? Daniel looked a little embarrassed. I did some research. Mom, you're out here on your own. I had to know who you were spending your time with. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but I understood his concern. He's a good man, Daniel said seriously. He told me a lot about when you were a little girl. You deserve to be happy. Just then, Arthur came back into the room. Seeing us reconciled, he smiled in relief. All sorted out? He asked. Daniel stood up and bowed deeply to Arthur. Mr. Arthur, thank you for taking care of my mother. All right, Arthur waved his hand. Your mom has had a tough life. Treat her well from now on. Daniel nodded repeatedly, then turned to me. Mom, I have to get back to the city. Leo has a fever, and Jessica can't handle it on her own. Leo's sick? I immediately became anxious. Is it serious? 101.3. The doctor said it might be the flu. He looked at his watch. I'm taking the last bus back. I'm going with you, I said decisively. Arthur, can you? Go. Arthur waved with a smile. I have the caregiver here. I'll be fine. And so, after 3 months, I was on my way back to the city. Unlike the last time, my son was holding my hand tightly, as if afraid I would disappear again. The apartment building where Daniel lived was still so familiar. As the elevator went up, my heart beat faster with each floor. 3 months. Had Leo grown taller? How would Jessica treat me? Were her parents still there? The elevator doors opened, and I could hear Leo's crying and Jessica's tired attempts to soothe him. Daniel took out his keys and opened the door. The familiar entryway, the familiar shoe rack, but with a few extra pairs of unfamiliar slippers, Jessica's parents. Mom's home, Daniel announced loudly. The living room instantly fell silent. Jessica came out of the bedroom, holding a flushed Leo. Seeing me, her expression was complicated. Mom, she greeted me stiffly. You're here. I nodded, my attention immediately drawn to my grandson. Leo, I opened my arms. Grandma. Leo struggled out of his mother's arms and stumbled toward me. I swept him up into a hug. His little body was as hot as a coal. Oh, my sweet boy. Why are you so hot? 101.7, Jessica said wearily. It just went up again. The hospital gave us medicine, but he won't take it. I felt Leo's forehead. It was burning up. Here, let Grandma give you your medicine, okay? Don't want yucky medicine. Leo buried his head in my shoulder. Want Grandma to sing. I held Leo and gently rocked him in the living room, humming his favorite nursery rhyme. Gradually, his sobs subsided, and he rested quietly in my arms. Where is it? I asked Jessica. She pointed to the medicine packet on the coffee table. With Leo in one arm, I expertly mixed the medicine with the other, then whispered to my grandson, Leo, Grandma has a secret to tell you. He looked up at me with teary eyes. When Grandma was a little girl, I was also scared of taking medicine, I said mysteriously. Then I discovered a magic trick. If you pinch your nose when you drink it, you can't taste the yucky part at all. Leo was skeptical, but he did as I said. After he finished the medicine, his eyes widened in surprise. It's not yucky. Jessica watched from the side, dumbfounded. Mom, you're amazing. Just experience, I said lightly, continuing to walk around the room with Leo. You two go get some rest. I'll take care of him. Daniel went to the kitchen to get some water. Jessica hesitated for a moment, then followed him. I could faintly hear their conversation. How long is your mom staying? Jessica asked in a low voice. Depends on Leo's condition. Daniel's voice was a bit cold. What, not happy about it? It's not that. It's just my parents. Good. I need to talk to them anyway. A moment later, Jessica's parents came out of the guest room. They were clearly a bit awkward when they saw me. Jessica's father gave a stiff nod, while her mother pretended not to see me and walked straight to the kitchen. Uncle, Auntie, Daniel suddenly spoke, his voice surprisingly calm. Could I have a word with you? The four of them went into the bedroom and closed the door. I sat on the couch with Leo, faintly hearing sounds of an argument from inside. Leo squirmed uncomfortably in my arms. Grandma, are they fighting? No, they're just discussing things. I kissed his forehead. Come on, Grandma will tell you a story. I started telling the story of the three little pigs, deliberately raising my voice to cover the sounds of the argument from the bedroom. Halfway through the story, the bedroom door opened. Jessica came out with red eyes, her parents following behind her with stony faces. We're leaving, Jessica's father said angrily to his wife. Pack your things. Dad. Jessica tried to stop him, but her mother pushed her hand away. Ungrateful, her mother shrieked. We sold our house to come and help you, and this is how you treat us? If I had known, I never would have let Jessica marry you. Daniel stood to the side, his expression firm, but his tone even. Uncle, Auntie, I'm not kicking you out. I just hope that both our families can have their own space. You can rent an apartment nearby and come see Leo anytime. Nonsense, Jessica's father cursed. You just want your mother to come back. Fine, we'll leave. Let's see how you manage. They angrily packed their bags and slammed the door on their way out. Jessica collapsed onto the couch, tears streaming down her face. Are you happy now? Daniel sat down next to her and put his arm around her. Jessica, we need to have our own life. Your parents meant well, but they overstepped. I watched this scene, my heart filled with mixed emotions. Was I once like that too? Interfering in my child's life in the name of love? Mom, Jessica suddenly turned to me, her eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry for how I treated you before. I shook my head. It's all in the past. Will you come back and live with us? She pleaded. Leo needs you. We need you too. I looked at the hopeful expression in Leo's eyes, then at the weary faces of Daniel and Jessica. I sighed softly. I can stay for a few days, until Leo gets better. No, Mom, Daniel interrupted me. I mean, if you want to, this will always be your home. Of course, if you prefer your life in Maple Creek, we understand that too. The son who had once asked me to move into the basement had now learned to respect his mother's choice. My nose tingled, and I almost cried. How about this? I said after a moment of thought. I'll come and stay for 2 or 3 days a week to spend time with Leo. The rest of the time, I'll be in Maple Creek. It would be good to go back and forth. Daniel and Jessica looked at each other and nodded. Whatever you want, Mom. And so, I temporarily returned to my son's home. For the next few days, I devoted myself to taking care of the feverish Leo and tidying up the mess Jessica's parents had left behind. Jessica was a bit reserved at first, but seeing how I cared for Leo, she gradually relaxed. Mom, she came to talk to me on the 4th night. I want to apologize to you. I was so thoughtless before. I patted her hand. We're family. We don't say these things. No, she insisted. I have to say it. You've done so much for this family, and I still wanted you to live in the basement. Her voice cracked. Jessica, I said gently, I understand your intention was to help your parents. It's just that the way you went about it was not right. She looked at me with teary eyes. You don't hate me? Hate you? I smiled. What mother hates her child? As long as you're happy, I'm happy. My words seemed to touch a nerve. She suddenly threw herself into my arms and cried like a child. Mom, I've actually always been so jealous that Daniel has a mom like you. So that was it. I gently stroked her back, suddenly understanding her previous hostility toward me. It was a complex emotion, a mixture of envy and insecurity. "Silly girl," I said softly. "Aren't I your mother now, too?" She cried even harder, but this time her tears seemed to carry a sense of relief. Leo recovered, and my temporary stay came to an end. Before I returned to Maple Creek, Daniel's family held a formal family meeting. Daniel sat with a notebook, looking very serious, ready to lay out the future family arrangements. Jessica and Leo sat on the couch, and I sat in the armchair, as if we were at an important ceremony. "First, Grandma's house is to be kept. She can live wherever she wants," Daniel said, looking at me. I nodded in agreement. "Second, every Saturday is family day. Either we go to Maple Creek to see Grandma, or Grandma comes to the city. Third, my in-laws can rent a place nearby, but they will no longer live with us." Jessica hesitated. "My parents, they've already gone back to their hometown." "They went back?" Daniel asked in surprise. "Yes," she said, looking down. "They said they were too embarrassed to rent a place nearby. They packed up and went home. They said they'll come back when we really need them." I noticed that as Jessica said this, her shoulders visibly relaxed. It seemed she, too, had been suffocated by her parents' over-involvement. "Fourth," Daniel continued, "all major family decisions must be discussed by the whole family, including Mom." He emphasized this point, glancing at Jessica. Jessica immediately nodded. "Of course." After the meeting, Daniel drove me back to Maple Creek. On the way, he told me that his company physical found he had high blood pressure and an early-stage stomach ulcer. "The doctor said it's caused by long-term stress," he said with a wry smile. "It makes sense. The house was a war zone every day. I guess I'm finally learning that health is important." I chided him with a heavy heart. "Work less overtime from now on, and eat on time." When we got back to Maple Creek, Arthur was already discharged and was sunbathing in his yard. He waved happily when he saw us get out of the car. "Arthur," Daniel walked over quickly to help him up. "You look much better." "Of course," Arthur said proudly. "The caregiver Ellie hired for me makes sure I take my medicine and exercise every day. It's hard not to get better." Watching the old man and the young man talk so familiarly, a warm feeling spread through my heart. The two most important men in my life had become friends. Before Daniel left, he mysteriously handed me an envelope. "Mom, this is a little something from me and Jessica." I opened it and found a bank book with a deposit of $100,000. My eyes grew hot, but I didn't refuse it. My son had finally grown up and understood responsibility. Life returned to its peaceful rhythm, but with a new twist. Every Saturday, Daniel's family would visit as promised. Sometimes we would go to the Maple Creek Inn for my tea ceremony class, and other times we would just have a picnic in my little yard. Jessica became more diligent and considerate, always trying to help me with chores. Leo was like my little shadow, sticking to my side all day. Arthur's health continued to improve, and he became a regular visitor to my yard. We tacitly avoided talking about the unsent letters, simply enjoying the warmth of our friendship in our later years. The County Education Bureau officially hired me as a consultant for rural teachers, and twice a month I would go to different rural schools to provide guidance. Chloe's Inn became famous because of my cultural experience courses and was even featured on the State Tourism Board's recommendation list. On a bright spring Sunday, Daniel's family and Arthur were all gathered in my little yard. Jessica was in the kitchen helping me make a barbecue, Daniel and Arthur were playing chess, and Leo was chasing butterflies in the yard. "Mom," Daniel said suddenly, "Jessica and I have been talking. We want to take you and Arthur on a trip this summer. Where would you like to go?" "Yes, Mom," Jessica said, wiping her hands as she came out of the kitchen. "You've worked hard your whole life. You deserve to enjoy yourself." I looked at Arthur, and he smiled and nodded at me. "Then let's go to San Francisco," I said. "When I was young, I always wanted to see the Golden Gate Bridge." "Great, San Francisco it is." Daniel slapped his thigh. "We'll stay in the best hotel and eat the best food." Looking at the happy scene before me, I suddenly remembered my husband's last words. "Ellie, you must live a happy life. For me, and for Daniel." "My love, I've done it. Not just for you, but for myself too. As the sun set, the aroma of the barbecue filled the small yard. Amid the laughter, I quietly wiped a tear from the corner of my eye. Life at 70 is a rare thing, and yet I was just beginning to welcome the most beautiful time of my life.